Okay, good afternoon, class. This is a pre-recorded lecture. Um, so last time we were discussing about the contract of employment, and um, we submitted several questions. Now, in relation to these questions, I'd like to respond as follows. No, can employer-employee relationship exist if no contract is executed prior to engagement? The answer is yes. Remember, we said that the labor contract is vested with public interest. The terms and conditions is not solely upon the agreement of the parties, but is determined by law. And under the law, the one that controls the relationship is not the contract per se or the written agreement, but it is the fact that there is control. I will further discuss the matter of control in a little while. Now, what is the required form of employment contract under the circumstances? Well, following this basic requirement of control, then theoretically, as long as the elements of control are present in an employer-employee relationship, an employment contract is deemed to exist. And finally, if there is a belated signing of an employment contract, then it can bring certain effects. If it's a probationary employment and the execution of the agreement is belated, then the problem there would be uh, uh, the inability to present to the employee the condition the terms for continued employment, meaning there would be a violation of due process here because the probationary employee would not know what to meet. Then under the circumstances, the probationary employee now acquires the rights of a regular employee. Now, please note that there is probationary employment when the employee, upon his engagement, is made to undergo trial period during which the employer determines his fitness to qualify for regular employment based on his reasonable standards made known to him at the time of engagement. And as found in the cases cited, no, uh, this determination is required for compliance of due process. Now we go to the control that uh, we explained is essential in the matter concerning employer-employee relationship. Now there are a variety of indications on the matter of control. Um, First is the selection, or rather the determination of employer-employee relationship. First is the selection and engagement of the employee. So if you have been selected and in the contract, it clearly states that you are an employee, then for all intents and purposes, you are an employee. Now, another indication of employer-employee relationship is the payment of wages. So if there is a payment of wages, that would also show a semblance of employer-employee relationship. And of course, fine, the third one would be the power of dismissal. So if you are dismissed by your employer, then by implication, you are an employee. So the first indications of employee-employee relationship shows that such relationship uh, does exist. But the fourth test is actually the most controlling of all. And this is what we call as the control test. So what is this control test all about? The control test pertains to the power of an employer to control. So pay attention to this, to control two aspects of employment. The first aspect is the matter of controlling the uh, means and methods as to how a work is to be done. And the second phase of control is controlling the result. So both the manner of uh, doing the work, and the second one is the desired output. So the control test presupposes these two elements. Absent any of them, if only one is present and the other one is absent, then this may not be sufficient control. For example, if this is very common in commission-based engagement or yung mga sales, no? If in the agreement, what is um, stated is that the the salary will be based on the sales. So as to how you will conduct the sales, bahala ka. So under that score, there is possibility that that is you are merely engaged as a sales agent, and there may not necessarily be an employer-employee relationship. Ito yung sa mga insurance na ang desire lang result as to how you do it, uh, bahala ka. Now, if in the course of the engagement, the employer will be the one to arrange for the schedule of the work, for example, or you will be required to go to the office from 8 a.m. up to 5 p.m. And then you conduct your sales in this manner, etc. Then, if that be the case, uh, employer-employee relationship is deemed to exist. Now, in the case of ROA versus uh, Legend Villas, the Supreme Court found that there is employer-employee relationship there, although the employee was only hired as a pianist. But according to the records that have been established, it was the hotel who determines the type of music that he will have to play, and that he has to make sure that the uh, customers are satisfied. So, yung result very clear. And then, sabi ng court, parang, oh, ikaw din nagbibigay ng schedule, etc. And binabayaran din ata siya ng SSS and 13th month pay, etc. So, there are indications that he was treated as an employee, although his work is not really directly related to the restaurant business. But because of the control, he was deemed to be employed by the company. And in a number of cases, this has been shown. So yung two elements, uh, control as to the means and methods as to how the work is to be done, and control as to the result, makes the control quite clear. And in such situation, employer-employee relationship is deemed to exist. So remember that. In our asynchronous session, I'll be asking you to digest related cases on this. So clear control pertains to the control over the means and manner of work done by the employee, or the means and over the results of the work. So means at saka result. If these two concur, then employer-employee relationship is deemed to exist. Now we go to the other part of our course, which is conditions of employment. Now, when we speak of conditions of employment, there are many attributes, or there are many conditions of employment, so to speak. Um, Under the first rule on the implementing rules and regulation is the hours of work. Now, please take note that these conditions of employment on hours of work uh, will not apply to these types of employees, no. So it covers all workers in non-agricultural sector, whether it's for profit or not. So even church is bound, except the following. So government employees, whether employed by the national government or any of its political subdivisions, including those employed in government-owned and controlled corporations. So the key here is whether or not the enterprise has its own charter. So if it was created by law, then even if it performs private function, but there is a law that created it, then that is not covered by the labor code. But if it is a company that was sequestered by the government, but the company is created under the Securities and Exchange Commission, incorporated siya, private corporation siya na na-acquire lang as a recovered asset by the government, then that is bound, no, by the labor code. Example of which would be uh, yung mga bangko, no? Yung saan ba yung Coco fund na deposit, no? Yung bangko na yun na used to be managed by Cojuangco, pero may interest ng government, is bound by the labor code provisions and subject to uh, the conditions of employment under the labor code. Basta the key is whether or not the government enterprise has its own charter. Pag may sariling charter, not covered. Pag walang charter but created siya under the sa SEC or sa corporation code, then it's covered. Second one would be managerial employees, and I think this was part of your assignment. And managerial employees are those who meet all of the following conditions. So the primary duty consists in the management of the establishment. They customarily and regularly direct the work of two or more employees. So if your title is that of a manager, but there's no one that you direct for work, you are not. No? They have the authority to hire or fire employees of lower rank, or their suggestions and recommendations as to hiring and firing, and as to the promotion of any other change of status are given particular weight. No? And also officers or members of the managerial staff. By the way, na-missed out lang dito even yung supervisory employees, no, kasama. And when we talk of supervisory employees, not more than 20% is allotted to routinary functions. So members of the managerial staff, if they perform the following, again, ganun din. customarily regularly exercise discretion and independent judgment to assist a proprietor or a managerial. No? Actually, kasama dito yung managerial employees. No? And then, of course, yung domestic servants or kasambahay and persons in the personal service of another if they perform such services in the employer's home, which are usually necessary or desirable for the maintenance and enjoyment thereof, or minister to the personal comfort, convenience, or safety of the employer as well as the members of his employer's household. So this, in this instance, it's very clear, no, na yung domestic servant or yung kasambahay must be performing personal service on the employer's home. So kung ang trabaho ni Inday ay nagbabantay sa business, uh, for all intents and purposes, this may not exactly be considered solely as being a kasambahay. But if she is made to perform other work, no, minamaximize siya in the business, then that would constitute already as that of kasambahay. Rather, that would constitute already as regular employment na in the business. So kung pinagluluto mo pero yung pagluluto mo naman isang sobra-sobra na pinagbebenta mo sa online or sa negosyo mo na, medyo that becomes a that could be an issue. Lalo na kung may catering ka tapos si Inday ang gumagawa ng isang katerbang spaghetti, mga 10 kilo araw-araw, then that may be an issue. So, even if you say that, well, I treat you as family and all that. So, again, papasok tayo dun sa labor contracts are vested with the public interest and the terms and conditions is not solely determined by the party. So, kahit si Inday, ang intindi niya ay kasambahay siya. Pero kung sa batas lumalabas ay hindi naman at siya ay na-exploit na, then for all intents and purposes, pwede siya later on mag-file as regular employment. And also, workers who are paid by result, no? Ito yung mga piece rate workers, no? Mga pakyaw, ganyan. Siyempre, hindi mo na alam kung paano ginagawa yung trabaho, kaya hindi na siya covered ng hours of work. Hindi siya pwedeng humingi ng overtime kasi pakyaw nga. So, these are also excluded. And of course, as we emphasized before, non-agricultural field personnel, they regularly perform their duties away from the principal or branch office or place of business of the employer, and whose actual work in the field cannot be determined with reasonable certainty. Ito yung mga tinatawag na field personnel. So if you render service outside and there's no way by which the work can be monitored, then for all intents and purposes, you are also not covered. Now, in the light of the pandemic where people work from home, I would say that now, itong manner of overtime pay for those who work from home may no longer apply because there is obviously a physical impossibility to determine whether overtime work was indeed rendered unless it is recorded, no, unless there is some form of determination that service was indeed rendered. So kung sa work from home, you are required to, for example, lecture certain items in as part of your work and all, no? Kung lumalabas recorded naman and all, and nakita naman 8 hours ka nagre-record or even more at na may output ka, then that's a different story, no? But again, it boils down to whether or not there is a way to monitor the actual hours work. And if there is, then that would be covered by the rule. Now, ano ba yung compensable sa hours work and what is it required? What is required under this provision? Now, the normal hours of work under the law should not exceed 8 hours per day. Now, hours worked include all time during which an employee is required to be on duty or to be at a prescribed workplace. And the second one would be all time during which an employee is suffered or permitted to work. So these two important items must be considered. No? All time during which an employee is required to be on duty or to be at a prescribed workplace, and all time during which an employee is suffered or permitted to work. So, ibig sabihin yan, yung mga oras na nire-require ka either to be on call or to be at a particular place, suffered or permitted eh. So, kung hinayaan ka o talagang pinilit ka, these are all considered hours worked. Now, take note that yung waiting time, ano ba yung waiting time? Well, this is very common sa mga nurses, no? Yung endorsement na tinatawag na before they leave the workplace, they have to wait, no? Literally wait for the next nurse. And then they write down the items that they need to endorse. So itong waiting time na to, these are actually compensable, provided that waiting is an integral part of work or the employee is required or engaged to wait. No? If the employee is required to remain on call in the employer's premises, so kung sinabi, huwag kang aalis, diyan ka lang, on call ka palagi, and you cannot use your time more effectively or gainfully for his or your own purpose, then that is also waiting time. So for example, pumunta ka sa ganitong location, hintayin mo yung tawag ko. Then obviously, there's no way by which the employer can make his time productive, and that would constitute waiting time. Now, we relate it to the new normal. If you're at home and you are also on call, would that be compensable? Now, my submission is that since you can actually make use of your time productively, that may no longer be compensable. It's a different story if you are required to go elsewhere. But if you just stay at home, I would submit that that would not be covered by the rule on waiting time. Now, how about attendance at lectures, meetings, training programs, and the like? Now, it is not working time or it is not compensable if the following conditions are met. No? If it's outside the regular work hours, if it's voluntary, ikaw lang, and the employee does not perform productive work. So, if these are met, no, then that would not be compensable. Lahat, this should be cumulative. So, kailangan outside of the regular work hours. Kasi kung within the regular work hours, well, whether it's voluntary or not, it's of no moment because you are required to render, to be in, to work within that period. No? How about meal and rest period? Now, under the law, you should be given a meal or rest period or a time off of at least not less than 60 minutes. So, isang oras yun. But of course, this would be non-compensable kasi break yan, tinatawag na break time. Now, Paano kung ang break time mo would be shorter? If you're given a break of than 20 minutes, no, the rules provide that this could be allowed. No, you may only be given a less than 20 minutes meal break, provided that the work is non-manual. Sabihin, you're not really tired, no, and the establishment uh, regularly operates not less than 16 hours a day. But in this particular situation where the break is shorter, then that would already be compensable kasi parang sobrang eksi lang nun. No? Also, in cases of actual impending emergencies or there are urgent works to be done. So, yung urgent work on machinery, equipment, or installation to avoid serious loss, no, which the employer would suffer. So pag konti lang break mo dahil may machines ka na kaya i-maintain and all, you can be compelled. But of course, again, you have to be paid. No? And then when the work is necessary to prevent serious loss of perishable goods. Now, how about yung rest period lang na mga 5 to 20 minutes o yung tinatawag na coffee break? Well, for all intents and purposes, these are, of course, compensable. That's why similar to the earlier situation where breaks could be shorter, it could be shorter, but it is compensable. How about a rest period? No? How many days did God created the world? Created it in several days, and on the seventh day he rested. So, as man is created in the likeness and image of God, we should also rest on the seventh day. So, the work should not be less than 24 hours after every 6 consecutive normal work days. In other words, maximum of 6 days and 8 hours a day generally. Now, the employer shall determine and schedule the weekly rest day of his employees, which means it's possible that your rest day may fall on a weekend, and that is part of management prerogative. Now, except that if the employee requests for a particular day to meet his religious obligation, employer are bound to consider it naman. But there has to be a balance. No? Kasi if the work is needed during that religious activity, then pwede naman niyang gawin na either every other day. I-accommodate pa rin, but it has to be balanced. No? So this would fall well for Catholics. Normally the religious worship is Sunday, and then for INC members, I think Thursday. So ganon. Now with the new normal again, we look at the new normal. Well, because many normally work from home now, then for all intents and purposes, I suppose this may no longer be much of an issue because you can serving the Lord or praying chooses no time. You can even do it at night. So baka hindi na rin siya ganun ka-available na pwede ma-invoke na magdadasal po ako on a particular hour kasi obviously that could be adjusted in the new normal. Wala nang mass eh. Now, I'd like to bring your attention to Department Advisory Number 2, which is the guidelines on the adoption of flexible work arrangement. Now, this can also be read in the recent circular on work from home. No. Now, because there's also a law that was later on passed, no, on that aspect. Now, ano ba itong guidelines on the adoption of flexible work arrangement? Now, here, uh, it gives, again, remember that in order that we can succeed as a nation, we have to be open with uh, adjustments, no? And of course, right now, there might be certain industries which need to adopt some flexible work arrangements. So this is recognized, no? Um, uh, these are coping mechanisms and remedial measures, no, in times of economic difficulty, lalo na yung mga enterprises na struggling, no. So under this concept, the dole recognizes the desirability and practicality of flexible work arrangement, no. So these are alternative arrangement or schedules other than the traditional or standard work hours. Now, this is very common now, lalo na mahina ang business. So, talagang pwede na maggawa ng flexible na certain days papasok, certain days hindi. Now, take note of the rules, no? Yung compressed work week also applies, no? Pwedeng instead of 6 days, pwedeng 5 days. So the 48 hours per week required could be distributed in those times, no? So medyo tataas ng konti yung instead na 5 o'clock mag-end, pwedeng 6 to cope with the 6 day work. So madi-dispense na yun kasi dinistribute na siya over a period of 5 days. Now, but is clear here is that, so although you can work for 8 hours, but it could be extended, provided it should not extend 12 hours, no? And there, so pwede ma-extend, so magiging 9 hours without incurring overtime pay kasi nga ginawang dinistribute, no? And also reduction of work days, ayan, no? Rotation of workers, pwedeng just to give way, no, to the others, lalo na kung konti ang rules. And then, of course, yung forced leave, uh, this could also be employed, no? Except that during the pandemic, I think, no, hindi pwedeng i-apply yung forced leave, no, or during the ECQ, no? In which case, yung dole naman yun, pwedeng magbayad in those times na nag-leave. And then, broken time schedule. So, pwede, no, within the day or week remaining. So, pwedeng merong certain breaks, no. And then yung flexi holiday schedules. So, the employee pwedeng mag-agree na yung kanyang holiday could be applied on a certain day. Yeah, as long as the employee will agree, that is acceptable, no? Now, under these flexible work arrangements, the employers and the employees are encouraged to explore alternative schemes under any agreement and company policy and practice in order to cushion and mitigate the effect of loss of income. So, ito talaga yung reality now. Kumbaga, pwedeng papiliin ng employer anong gusto ninyo, magsasarado tayo o magtutuloy tayo with flexible arrangement. So, ganun talaga. Now, take note of these guidelines, no, in the administration of the flexi work arrangement. So, the differences shall be treated as grievance. So, kung merong grievance machinery, so kung may union, any disagreement can be discussed, no? Now, if there's no grievance mechanism, then pwede sa dole i-refer, no? And then to facilitate the resolution of grievances, employees are required to keep and maintain as part of the records the documentary requirement. So, kailangan documented in writing para hindi, mas maganda na yung, as future lawyers, it's always important that everything should be in writing as much as possible. No? Now, so this took effect 2009. This is as effective as now, except that this is more common in the new normal. Okay, now I'd like to bring to your attention Labor Advisory number 17, series of 2020. So this is the present guidelines that incorporated the so-called work from home or telecommuting work arrangement. No. Now, this circular had to be implemented in the light of the ongoing pandemic. No? Well, the pandemic is still ongoing, and it is very likely that this will stay. In fact, even in this education sector, I believe and understand that more likely, even if may vaccine already available, and this online thing could still continue, or probably there might be some face to face and combined with online, which is also good. No, there are advantages. No, now under this guidelines which was implemented after the ECQ. So health standards are reminded, no? Or employers are reminded to meet the corresponding health standards and health protocol in the workplace. So nandito yung continuous monitoring and compliance with the IATF guidelines. And above all, what is important here is that enterprises are encouraged to adopt work from home schemes. No, employees on work from home or telecommuting arrangements shall be provided with adequate support to perform the assigned task or job. So aside from the work from home, yung alternative work scheme, no, as an alternative to termination of employment. So ito, kesa magtanggal ng trabaho o magsarado, encourage yung enterprise na transfer of employees to another branch, assignment of employees to other function, reduction of normal work days per week, job rotation, etc. Providing workers with work within the work week or within. So, kumbaga parang last resort, no? Yung anong tawag dito, yung pagtanggal sa trabaho. And job rotation, alternately providing workers with work within the work week or within the month. No, I will also be sharing with you a link on a brief discussion on termination of employment in this pandemic. No, I will be sharing the link in the announcement. So after this discussion on ours work, I invite your attention to that short video to understand the impact of this pandemic. No? Partial closure of establishment, where some units or departments of the establishment are continued while other units are closed. No? Right now, there are a number of entities and enterprises that have to close down. And if you go to a mall, it's really frustrating, you know. During this pandemic, I had the chance to visit, I think, Magnolia Place. And my heart broke when I saw Toys R Us with so many toys, but not a single child, no? Kasi bawal din, and nobody is buying. So, talagang really very, very sad, no? Each and every one of us has his or his own struggles to deal with, no? Talagang we need to be more patient and understanding and kind to one another, no? Flexible work arrangements, well, yun, that's also part of the encouragement. And wages and wage-related benefits, no? So ito, they can just agree to adjust certain benefits, no? Ito pwedeng isuspend some provisions of the CBA kung talagang hindi kaya ng employer. The adjustment in wage or wage-related benefits shall not exceed 6 months for a period upon the CBA. So, pwedeng masuspend, no? But of course, this presupposes na talagang tinamaan. But meron din naman kasi ng mga enterprises, no, na before this pandemic, they have been earning millions, if not billions. And pagka ganun yung situation naman, they should somehow share, no? Sharing is caring. Hindi naman pwedeng gagamitin mo yung pandemic to take advantage of your workers. That would be sad, no? Kasi yung tipong you will take advantage of people's weakness during this time, that is really the worst that one can really do. That would be heartless, no? And of course, take note of Labor Advisory 6 cited here, yung entitlement of separated employees. No? May guidelines on the release of the separation pay. And yung payment ng separation pay, by the way, mag-a-apply yan kung hindi sobrang lugi yung kumpanya. No? Kasi kung negative yung income niya at nagsarado siya, walang separation pay. So, take note of that. No? Not at all times may bayad. No? But of course, if to prevent losses, may kita yan. So, may separation pay yan. Later, the separation pay may vary. Sometimes it's 1 month. Sometimes it's half month. Ang key lang dyan is kung mag-benefit yung employer, in which case the separation pay would be 1 month for every year of service. Pero kung ang service mo 6 months ka lang, 1 month pa rin yung separation pay mo. Kasi it presupposes na mahirap naman yung separation pay na half month lang, paano ka makakahanap ng trabaho and all. So, ganun yun. And of course, take note of the other requirements, no? Reporting requirement, no? Yung they have to report to DOLE whatever work arrangement that they are implementing. So that ends our discussion on hours work. I will be sharing a link of the a short video clip in the matter of closure of establishments. I want you to watch that also. And then I'll be sending also some activities for the asynchronous. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you. Thank you, and good afternoon.